Hi, my name is Kim Lippy, and I'm here for Dehydrating 101. I hope everyone here is for that. I apologize for the shift in rooms, but I don't have a voice today, and they had to put me in a place where there was a microphone. So at any point, if you can't hear me, please let me know, and I'd be glad to turn it up a little bit. Today, we're going to be going over Dehydration 101, but actually it's going to go a whole heck of a lot farther than that. What we're going to be covering is why we dehydrate, history of dehydrating, different types of dehydrators, different types of foods, what we can dehydrate, how to prepare food to dehydrate, how long we dehydrate, how to store dehydrated food, how to use foods you have dehydrated, which is a lot in a short amount of time. If you can, write down your questions so that I can answer them in the end, so I can kind of save my voice and not repeat what I'm getting ready to say anyway, because usually when I ask people to do that, their question is answered in the presentation. So with no further ado, if you think about it, you might want to turn down your cell phones or something like that to vibrate. Okay, the introduction is why we're here. This is my husband, David, and for today he's Vanna White because my shoulder's also not working, so he's going to be jumping up and down helping with the samples. We've dehydrated for about 15 years, and it was mainly to support our backpacking hobby. In 2008, I dehydrated enough food to provide lightweight, tasty meals for a projected 6-month visit, a hike on the Appalachian Trail. And we'll relate to you our experiences in making and storing and using dehydrated foods. One nice thing about this presentation is we haven't just dehydrated, we've actually used the food. And also had to get creative with it, which I think is going to be important in a grid down situation. I just can't stress enough how important it is to use what you've dehydrated. There we are on the trail looking rather scruffy. So why we dehydrate? It's easy, it's economical, no artificial preservatives, no power required for food storage. It requires little storage space and preserves many nutrients, long shelf life, if done correctly, and waste not, want not. I wanted to share with you one of the things. David, you want to get the little container of tomatoes from over here. You can get, I have done a crate, y'all know what a box is, I think they're 22 pounds of tomatoes, dehydrated them down, put them through the blender to powder, and that right there, so I can hold it, this right here is a crate of tomatoes, so talk about saving space, and it rehydrates really quick, and it's wonderful in a cup of soup, in stews, you name it, it's really a great product. David is going to take it and pass it around for y'all, and hopefully the gentleman in the back, either one of the two of you are going to end up with it. If you could somehow get it back up here, that would be great, or just put it on a table behind you. This is the one that I think is really interesting. Egyptian tribes were drying fish and poultry as early as the 12,000 BC. I mean, that's, and look at how primitive these circumstances are. So it really does not require electricity to do it. It helps a lot, but it doesn't require it. And they were doing it long before we had our fancy dehydrators. But also, one of the reasons that we dehydrate is to keep out unwanted ingredients. The manufacturers of dried meat and fruit douse their products with preservatives, artificial colors, and flavors. Even the Quaker instant oatmeal slips you fake strawberries and blueberries with the magic of Red 40 and Blue 2. Flavored rice and noodle products from the grocery store often contain MSG and massive amounts of salt, particularly hydrogenated oils, and other ingredients that would be easier to pronounce if you paid attention during chemistry class. Free yourself from the chemical engineered foods by dehydrating. Nutrient loss, this is usually an interesting fact. Canning, you have a 60 to 80% nutrient loss due to extreme heat. Freezing, you have a 40 to 60% nutrient loss due to cellular rupture. Dehydration, it's only a 3 to 5% nutrient loss due to low heat and gentle airflow. The dehydrators, it really doesn't take anything fancy. A lot of people start with the little Ronco thing, and they typically move up fast because if you're serious about dehydrating, you just want a good, efficient, fast piece of equipment. Air drying works for some things, and just hanging some up works better for some things, and we're going to go over that during the presentation. Low temperature oven settings sometimes work. The newer ovens have a setting for dehydrating. The solar dehydrators, which I'm going to show you a picture of and tell you how to get a hold of. Many sizes and designs are available in stores and on the internet. We use the Lippy Pro, which is right there. We picked that one because it was a medium range price one, and it also has survived being dropped from this high up onto concrete floors and never broken, which is amazing to me considering it's all made out of plastic for the most part. So, I mean, when you find something that works for you, you stick by it, and we've used that for probably 15 years and been real happy with it. And because people automatically ask me which one to use, I just say the one, Lippy Pro, and I've yet to have anyone come back to me and say I'm disappointed in it. So, and one of the things that's nice though that one does not have is a side fan versus the top or bottom. This design has a fan on the bottom. Do you want to pick that dehydrator up and show them on the bottom there? And that's more typical. The more expensive one has the side fan that pushes it across the trays. Go ahead. Yeah, set it right there, and then pick the gray trays up. I'll show you that's the fan. Okay, what you're looking for in a dehydrator are the edges rounded and seamless. To me, that's a big factor in cleaning. As you see, these are rounded. How long has the manufacturer been in business, and what is the warranty? The Lippy Pro apparently has gone into partnership with Bosch, which I imagine all of you recognize as an incredibly good quality name brand. And that may be why Bosch bought that, because they knew it was a real good quality brand. Parts available when needed. Replacement motor, important. Oops, sorry. Many of them cook foods rather than dehydrate them. You don't want that. Digital temperature and timer, in my opinion, is very important. This one has that. I love it. Digital timer and temperature. Because when we leave on a trip like this and we're going to be gone all weekend, and I look at my refrigerator and I see a whole bunch of stuff there that it's going to be bad by the time I get back, I just throw it on the dehydrator, set it for 24 hours, and it's a done deal. I don't need to worry about it. It goes off on its own. And everybody I've talked to that didn't get that little feature was not happy about that, because you otherwise then have to set a timer. It's another apparatus that you have to have in your kitchen. Oh, and the jelly rolls are real important. One of the things I like about the Lippy, and they really do not give me any endorsement or, I don't get any kickback from this, but it all comes together as opposed to a la carte. And these really nice, these go on top of these sheets like this to keep the smaller items from falling through. And then in addition to that, it also comes with what they call jelly rolls. It's got a little lip on it. This holds 2 cups of liquid, which is so great. And I've got 2 for every tray. I think I bought a couple extra trays, and I would suggest y'all do that too if you're going to do this to any great degree. Now then, this is the Cadillac, the Excalibur. Does anybody here have an Excalibur? Just out of curiosity, has anyone, they don't have their dehydrator and they're thinking about maybe getting one? Okay, so, and the rest of you already have a dehydrator, it's just a different brand, right? Is that right? Okay. Anyway, the Excalibur is made in the USA, and it's been in business for 35 years. It's new, starting usually at about $200. And everything about the Excalibur comes a la carte. Your jelly trays, these extra, I think their trays are actually made out of this. And they're much thinner plastic than what this is. But people who have them are happy with them, and if you want to go that direction, have at it. I think it's real interesting. The man who is cooking, cast iron cooking out here, made the next one for his wife, and look at the similarity. And this plan is available. It's a homemade one, and it's available at the home extension service for you. That's a homemade one. So he's got the fan in the back, and it's got the little, I'm not sure, I guess that's for the fan. But if you think about it, congratulate him and tell him that you saw his dehydrator on this slideshow. Okay, and we were talking earlier about the solar dehydrator. This one's a 5-tray food pantry hanging food dehydrator, and it's a perfect way to dehydrate foods naturally without electricity. It's more environmentally friendly and less expensive to use than the electric food dehydrators. It's suitable for all types of fruits and vegetables, and it can also be used for making jerky and sprouting wheat and other things. And it runs about $60, and I think that Jan carries that. A lot of you ask, what is some dehydrating tools? I think dehydrating is one of the simplest, most inexpensive things you can do in regards to prepping. The more evenly that you can make your slices of food, the more evenly the food will dehydrate it. These are some of my favorite tools to use. One's a mandolin slicer, which is pictured here, an egg slicer, and which is right here on the. It just occurred to me my mouse is not working on the screen. Anyway, the egg slicer and a gadget I picked up somewhere. I don't know where I got it, which is to the left here, and it's my tomato slicer. It works best for tomatoes. The egg slicer works great for soft things like strawberries, but not too much else. The wires will bend your food if it's too strong. Okay, moving into things that what can be dehydrated. Herbs and spices. And personally, I think they do better air drying them. I just, at the end of the year, pretty much pick them and tie them at the top of them and just hang them. And they air dry, and they do wonderfully that way. And it's so stress-free. You just cut it and hang it and get around to taking them off when you're get around to doing it. Vegetables, fruits, meats, dairy products. That's one that a lot of people don't know that you can do safely, and you certainly can. Soups, stews, grains, pastas. What didn't dehydrate well is ham. It was very leathery, and it's not that it didn't dehydrate well, it did, but it did not reconstitute well in our experience on the trail. Salmon was a poor texture. I got cans of really high quality salmon, and I tried to can them, and they didn't rehydrate good. They dehydrated good, they didn't rehydrate good in terms of consumption and working them into recipes and so forth. And avocado, with its very high fat content, also did not do well. So preparing your food for dehydrating, small, thin pieces will dehydrate faster. Use a food processor to slice the vegetables like squash and mushroom and zucchini. Of course, we won't have electricity to use our food processors, but right now, and when you do, I would definitely suggest you use that. My Cuisinart food processor is my right hand in the kitchen. I love using that to slice foods. Thick pieces will tend to case harden, and you'll hear me use that term on the outside while staying leathery on the inside. And case harden means a blueberry is a good example of that. That will dry on the outside and stay leathery on the inside, which subjects it to mildew and so forth. To keep that from happening on a blueberry, you can punch every one of them with a toothpick, which most people just use the freeze-dries. Sometimes it's just not worth it to dehydrate. If you grow your own blueberries, you've got them there free anyway, by all means do that. But I would not suggest going to the farmer's market and buying fresh blueberries and putting them on the dehydrator because of the case hardening scenario. Some people have been successful with it, others haven't. You may want to just buy the freeze-dried ones. Cook, rinse, and dry all meats before dehydrating. Fat doesn't dehydrate well. And use the blender or food processor to prepare fruit mixture, and then pour them into these jelly roll trays here, like that. And herbs are easy to grow. At the end of the growing season, before the first frost, I harvest all my herbs and dehydrate them for winter use. There they are laying out on the deck, they've just been harvested and they're ready to be. But actually, in the end, I really like doing the drying fresh herbs by hanging them. herbs and spices, garlic, onion, basil, oregano, peppers, marjoram, and rosemary, thyme. A well-ventilated space out of direct sunlight is ideal. If you live in humid areas, the process may be slower and mold can be a problem. If mold is an issue, I recommend using the dehydrator. Timing is everything. Harvest herbs early in the morning after the dew has dried from the leaves. Try to harvest herbs for drying before the flowers develop for better flavor. Allow 7 to 10 days to dry naturally if it's not on the dehydrator. A lot of people ask me during my presentation, well, how long do I do this and how long do I do that? It has everything to do with how much humidity is in your house. If you're running your air conditioners, it's going to be a lot less humidity during the summer than if your windows are open. So there's no way for me to tell you exactly. It's something you develop as just being able to see it and touch it and taste it and feel it when it's ready. You can't really over dehydrate foods. Most of it can't be over dehydrated. So here we've got marjoram that's freshly harvested. When I need a moment, now that's got little bitty leaves to it, so when I need a moment off my feet, I'll sit down and clip off all the little leaves and then put it on the dehydrator, or easier still, just wrap them up and hang them from your rafters. This is some fresh parsley. And all these samples are right here. You're welcome to take a look at those when the presentation's over with. It does wonderfully. Here's all my dried herbs, and they're demonstrated up here. They do great. I have not had any problem whatsoever on my herbs. Meats, this is something usually new to a lot of people, and this is why often I presentation dehydrating beyond beef jerky. I don't even touch on the beef jerky too much because it's something that's so common. But I do send you my favorite recipe for dehydrating beef jerky. The hamburger, if you would get that please and pass that around, that's wonderful. You need to get lean, you cook it, drain it, and rinse it. And it dehydrates and rehydrates so good. I think that's the reason why a lot of manufacturers don't do it. I mean, you can find, they call those hamburger crumbles, but they are just marvelous. We use those on the trail, and we'd come in and put our dehydrated spaghetti sauce with that and put boiling water over it, and by the time we have camp set up, it was ready to go, and it was just, a wonderful dinner. But that's a great one for a meal in a jar, to use that with to make stroganoff. And you can have your ground beef, you actually can do dehydrated sour cream, and of course you got your pastas, which they obviously rehydrate great, and onions and garlic. You can put all that together and have a great, what did I just say? It was the beef stroganoff. I always forget the beef stroganoff name. Anyway, so this is what your beef jerky looks like, which all of you have seen. And this is my all-time favorite. This is the ground beef going from the store, and that's been browned, rinsed, and ready for dehydration. And here it is on the tray and ready to become dehydrated. You can see I, crumbled it up real good and rinsed it off in a food colander, and then I put it on here. And you can see too where I have wax paper, because it will come through these things right here. So a lot of people say, well, how does your airflow go through the wax paper? I don't know how it happens, but it happens, and it happens wonderfully, beautifully. So use your parchment paper or your wax paper. And then this is a picture of it done. And that's a pound of ground beef with a quarter sitting next to it, so that you can have an idea about what it looks like when it's finished, and that jar right there is being passed around. But you see this little thing right here. You can buy these from Jan also on the internet, and you can get them in your prescription. Sometimes they come in that, and that's a great way to put one of those in that jar to help pull out the oxygen. So in addition to doing ground beef, I often do my own homemade bouillon. I buy a cow, and sometimes we get a half of a cow, and that comes with a lot of bones, and I never let the butcher keep them. I always say, I want my bones. And so I bring them home, put them in a big pot, and boil them, and it starts almost like a canner load of water and bones. And I boil it, and sometimes that's 2 days worth. and I take it all the way down to this little, I mean, that's like this much now, and it's really concentrated. And I pour it onto these jelly roll trays, and let them dehydrate and boil. So you boil down your own stock until it's only a few tablespoons are left. It's actually a little bit more than that. And you season it the way you like to, but be careful with the salt because somehow or other it becomes salty on its own. So I personally like to salt when I'm finished rehydrating. I just add the sea salt and until I like it's in its original state, but it'll be much saltier in the concentrated state. I did 8 quarts in my experiment, which boiled down to a cup and a half. The trick is to boil it down enough that it's thick and not watery anymore. I used the top of my wood-burning stove for this during the winter and spread evenly on jelly rolls to allow it to dry in the dehydrator until it becomes what they call bark. This is beef, this is bark, and it's actually ready to use now in the dehydrator or store, but I like to run that through my food blender to get powder. David, would you pick up the my beef bouillon and pass that around if you would? As a matter of fact, if whenever you see me starting on something, go ahead and pick it out and start it going around. He's found the chicken bouillon, which is basically the same thing, and you can do beef bouillon the same way. So we're moving into vegetables. Broccoli, green beans, corn, peas, lima beans, mushrooms, squash, zucchini, carrots, green and red pepper, kale, onions, spinach, celery. It all does really wonderful. The kale, I tried doing my own kale chips, and for some reason that just didn't work good for me. But it might be good in a lights out scenario when you don't have your local health food store to get a package of it. So, probably our least favorite on the rehydrated veggies was corn, is my guess. The best way to rehydrate is in your crock pot as a soup or stew. For green beans, I suggest, you might want to remember this, green beans you want to blanch first. Not all of it you need to blanch first. When in question, blanch and then dehydrate. Because it stops the, I don't know the technical name for it, but it's just a whole lot better for blanching it first and then freezing green beans. Freeze them, blanch, freeze, and then dehydrate, and you've got a really good product on your hands that's good for, you can actually use that as a side. You don't have to incorporate that into a stew. It's very palatable and tasty, rehydrated just as that. The freezing breaks down the cells so they'll rehydrate better. Otherwise, they'll take a couple hours to rehydrate. One of my favorite things to do as a dehydrated vegetable is broccoli. Broccoli, use the freshest that you can find. Cut it into small flowerets. Blanch it for color. Blanch for best color, texture, and flavor. Pour boiling water over it and sit 1 hour. It serves up almost as good as fresh. This veggie is one of the highest quality rehydration items I used. I barely got this picture because it was so good. I mean, we wanted to just eat it up real quick. None of this stuff looks good in the jar, in my opinion, but as you can see in the picture here, it rehydrates up almost as if it's right out of the grocery store, and it tastes that good too. Carrots are a wonderful thing to dehydrate. Peel and cut the ends off, slice them to 3/8 inch to 1/4 inch slices. Steam blanch them for 2 minutes before dehydrating. Maybe you want to get the carrots. 135 degrees, which is about the average for all vegetables. 6 to 12 hours, and they're an excellent addition to soups and stews. But as you can see here, this is the carrots going on the dehydrator, and this is what they look like afterwards. And this is an easy pound, and as you can see, the quarter next to. Now in this case, I didn't chop them. I ran them through the food processor, and it gave me a real thin. Some of them are more like in shreds than they are in coins, but coins work great too. Tomatoes are my absolute favorite to dehydrate. They probably suffer the least in taste. Keep in mind that rehydrating dehydrated tomatoes will not be as pretty as the original, but believe me, most of that original flavor will still be there, just a bit mushy instead. over dry them, double the time recommended, then put them in a Mylar bag with an O2 absorber, minimum chance of mold. Excuse me. Talking about putting things in a Mylar bag, one of the things that you can do is ask people to save their Capri Sun little holders. I wash these out, and then there's probably other people that are telling you how to do this in some of the other classes, but an iron can reseal these, or oh yeah, that's ugly. I hate labels. Anyway, how is it? Do you remember how they said to seal these? I know an iron can do it, and then and Jan sells something to resell Mylar. A what? Hair straightener, that's it, okay. And this right here is a sample that I sent off for that you can actually, if you don't want to mess with trying to save these kind of bags, they'll sell them on the internet. And you can see this hole right here. This thing looks just like what you get a lot of coffee in, right? So save your coffee bags and use those to keep it really stores things nice because it keeps it dark as opposed to the clear bags. And they could be free for you, but in addition, I'm going to show you something called a pump and seal eventually that will pull the oxygen out of these bags, just the same as the food, the things that you put on in it, the sealers, yeah. That's not electric dependent, but you saw my can of tomatoes. This has gone around already, I assume? Yeah. Tomato powder, using to thicken sauces. Add to soups and stews, great for barbecues, pizza, spaghetti, or juice. Every instant instant pizza sauce recipe I will provide you with. Very susceptible to spoiling, so it must be kept sealed or cold. Blend until you get the desired thickness. So some of you are going to be doing recipes for sauce and some paste. So you just add it until you get the consistency that you want. Used to thicken sauces, add to soups and stews, and I think you'll really enjoy the tomato powder immensely. Celery is another great thing that we do. Don't throw away your shreds. A lot of times we take those shreds off and throw them away when we're peeling it for serving, but hold on to those. Waste not, want not. Those do great in rehydration. Or you can cut them into coins, so to speak, or you can leave them straight on the dehydrator, but don't even throw away the peelings. This is coming off of the dehydrator, and this is basically the coins, the stuff that's just chopped like you would for salad. And then I take this and I sometimes put it into, depending on what type of form I want to end up having it resolved in, I powder it. And again, this is a whole head of celery. How often have we bought a head of celery and thrown away most of the good stuff because it just gets old in the refrigerator and we don't use it? Don't do that anymore. Throw it on your dehydrator and dehydrate it, and that keeps great, and it reconstitutes wonderful in soups and stews and things like that. And then you can take it down to the powdered form that you can buy in the grocery store. David, if you passed around the minced celery jar yet, that's what it looks like. Okay, eggplant does wonderful. This is the eggplant fresh from the garden, and that's the eggplant dehydrated. I just can't say enough good about eggplant. Donna Miller is here, and I work with her a lot. I teach classes for her on dehydrating, and she took this and tried it in a dish, and she said it works out better for eggplant parmesan doing this with your dehydrated eggplant versus using fresh. Because if you've made eggplant parmesan, one of the first things you do is basically sweat out the water from it. And instead, she just starts it from ground zero on this. She'll take her eggplant dehydrated, which David is trying to find for you. Yeah, and you just put that out in your pan and put your rehydrated sauce on it, and you're good to go. It bakes up wonderful. That's a great one to try on your family in terms of using your stored food. That's a great one. Garlic does great. We buy that in bulk or grow it, and to rehydrate it, to dehydrate it, we have found he could spend an entire day getting a pound almost off, all the skin off of it, and we have found this little apparatus in kitchen stores that is made up of the rubber that you put on jars and turn it. But it's a circular thing. It's about that long. Mine's red. I think they come in all different colors. They're worth their weight in gold. And you just put the cloves of garlic in it and run your hand over it, and all the skin comes off. So then you've got a pound of garlic ready to go on the dehydrator. And it's easier to skin and mince the whole bunch at once and rub that between rubber for quick, easy removal of skins. Cut the clove in half lengthwise or mince in a food processor, and then dehydrate at 95 degrees for 6 to 12 hours. This is that pound going on the dehydrator, and again, you can see I use the wax paper, and you can, this is a grid down situation where you can grind your own powder in a mortisel or just run it through the blender, and you can get powder which is passed around. And again, I would have more than just, I'd have the powder and I'd have the minced, just like you would anything that you see in the grocery store that's dehydrated, you can do that too. Peppers and the green and red, both of them do wonderful. They're pretty self-explanatory. I just mince those and throw them on the dehydrator, and they do great on the rehydration. Kale does wonderful. A lot of times people grow a lot more kale than they need. Don't throw it away, dehydrate it. Kale dehydrated looks similar to this right here. Doesn't look very pretty coming off the rehydrator. But throw that together with some pasta and some pine nuts, and that makes a great grid down meal. Wonderful. But this is what I use it for now. That's a whole head of kale, and it's been dehydrated, and I think this is a 1/4 cup. This is what it comes down to. He's getting ready to pass around the kale. And you talk about adding a punch to your smoothies in the morning. I feel the difference in my health, and that's probably the only food I can say that about is the kale. Powdered kale is wonderful in your smoothies. Now then, have any of you heard of leather britches? Does anybody here know what leather britches are? Okay. Leather britches are, David, go ahead and pass that around. This is David. He's getting the leather britches out. They're green beans on a string. We use a large darning needle and kitchen string, or you can also use dental floss to do this. And you pick your green beans or wax beans while they're tender and snappy. You wash them, snip off the stem end, and the other little sharp pointed end won't matter, so just leave that on. But you can see him here stringing this thing, and that's what they look like going onto the wall. They're nice and fresh, and they're just hanging there on the wall doing their own thing, and eventually they end up looking like this, which that's what's being passed around right now. And I know that you are thinking, that looks horrible, I cannot imagine me eating that, but guess what, they turn out great. The beans will become dry and brittle and wrinkled, and you'll wonder what in the world you'll ever do with them besides letting them swing there. In the winter, take down your dried beans and several strings for a large kettle. Remove the string part of it, rinse it well, and then put them on to cook. And basically, you put them through just a wash. They'll boil up. They'll boil up once. Pour off the first water so you'll know they're nice and clean. So you've given a boiling water bath, basically. And then pour the fresh water and toss in a ham bone and onion, and keep the beans with salt and pepper to taste and until they're tender, and you're good to go. This is what they look like once they're rehydrated. You can see this is a dehydrated one and this is a rehydrated one, and there's not very many vegetables that you dehydrate that you can use as a side on their own, not in a stew or anything. This is one of them. The broccoli was one of them. They rehydrate up. So again, that's a wonderful grid down way of holding on to you've saved your seeds for your green beans, and you've dehydrated them on the wall, and now you're using your food storage. Wonderful. And you can make up meals in a jar this way using these. I personally don't do that because I think when I get ready to use my food, I'm going to want to grab it as I do now. Grab a can of green beans and a can of carrots and do my own thing. But giving us gifts right now, that works great. Although these are pretty ugly. It's hard to get people to try these if they see them before you cook them. If they see them afterwards, they don't even know they're eating dehydrated green beans. Anyway, so mushrooms are great. You see those in the store? Again, that's a great way to know whether or not you can do that. He's going to pass around the green beans. Onions, they do great in their raw state. That is 2 cups right here on the dehydrator of raw minced onions, and that's what that looks like as a dehydrated form. You might see, and in the jar you're going to see a little bit of green and blue in here, and that's the iron in the soil that's transferred into the onion. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's a naturally occurring thing. I found out through my students that's what it was. I had a scientist in my class here one year, and they told me pumpkins is one of my most favorite things to do. And again, a lot of times we grow more pumpkins than what we need, and we end up throwing them away. Don't do that. Or if you've got people, friends that decorate with pumpkins, tell them please don't throw them away. Give them to you after Halloween. So I just take mine. My pumpkins and winter squash both taste the same. Did you know that? I didn't know that until I started dehydrating, and I found out you can use them interchangeably. Both are excellent dehydrated. You can cook the entire pumpkin, the whole thing, in your pressure cooker in 20 minutes, and then dehydrate it. And you see this. What I've done here is cook the whole pumpkin 20 minutes, thrown it in the sink. Now, one of the things you cannot do if you're going to do this is save the seed. But you don't need, one pumpkin should be enough seed, so the rest of them can be done this way. So they're in the sink, and all the skin off of that just pulls right off, and you've got the meat there. And I separate the seeds away from it. And this is what it looks like going onto again, these hold 2 cups each, so it's like a paste going, I put that through the blend or the food processor to get this paste. And then that's what it looks like. It's the coming off of the dehydrator. Thick sieved pumpkin in it's in 1 cup portions, are loaded onto the jelly roll trays of a dehydrator. On the right is the pumpkin meat, and it looks like the dehydrator trays after it's been dehydrated. So now I'm showing you, this is what we call pumpkin bark, and it's ready to use in that form if you'd like to store it that way. But I throw mine through the blender to get a powder because it rehydrates so much better, faster that way. Let's see, that's just pure pumpkin powder, and David should be passing that around. That goes great in pies. It makes up into a perfect pumpkin pie. You'd never know the difference between buying your canned pumpkin or canning it yourself, which I do that too. I can my pumpkin as well, but I don't see any difference in that. They make great muffins, pumpkin muffins, pumpkin pancakes, pumpkin breads, pumpkin soups throughout the winter. For an instant mug of pumpkin soup, mix together powdered pumpkin and a sprinkle of ginger powder, bouillon cube, a little bit of onion powder, dried milk, topped with a dollop of fresh cream, sour cream, and you've got a great treat for a pumpkin soup. Get the family involved in dehydrating. This is my little granddaughter, probably 3 or 4 years ago. They love it. They walk in the door now and they'll say, "Mammy, what are we going to dehydrate today?" Because you can see it's easy for them to put the raw product on the dehydrator. Zucchini that's what it looks like dried, and that makes a great, you serve that at parties with ranch dip, and it's very popular. It's really tasty. Also a thing that you can dehydrate spinach is wonderful, and I use rehydrated spinach on pizzas, in pasta dishes. It's great. That's what spinach looks like. And I broke my bottle of spinach. It tumbled over, and it travels around with me in this little red wagon, and one time it took a crash and I haven't remade it. Anyway, that's what it looks like dehydrated. Another thing that rehydrates great is alfalfa. A lot of people say, why do you dehydrate alfalfa? It can be grown inside, and we keep the seeds in food storage, but it's also a great addition to your breads to make them healthier and give you more. That's what it looks like dehydrated. Another one that I like to do is scallop potatoes from dehydrated potatoes, and that's what it looks like when they're rehydrated, and that's actually with the skins on. All I've done is taken my homegrown potatoes, thrown them through the Cuisinart food processor, and gotten real thin slices, dehydrated those, and then made them back into a scalloped potato dish, which is really yummy because it has so much time in the oven to rehydrate as it's doing its usual hour thing in there. So I use dehydrated powdered cheese and powdered non-fat milk, garlic flour, and whole milk. My milk that I use is I use powdered whole milk, which is something called Nido, and I'm going to go over that at the end there. Another thing is a favorite with me is Brussels sprouts. We love Brussels sprouts, and I thought, well, let's try this. So I did. These are the fresh blanched Brussels sprouts. That's what it looks like coming off of the dehydrator. That's what it looks like after it's been sitting in a little bit of boiling water for an hour. Oh my goodness, they were another one. The broccoli cabbage family seems to do really, really well in the dehydration. So all you do is cut off the ends and pull off the exterior layers, cut in thirds or halves, blanch in boiling water for 2 minutes, dehydrate at 125 for about 15 hours, and you end up with a product that's table ready, and it's good for a side. Fruits are great. The apples, bananas, berries, cantaloupe, cherries, figs, fruit leather roll-ups, kiwi, peaches, pineapples, strawberries. Watermelon is my most favorite. Oh my goodness, that's good. And again, we get the family involved, and she's putting out apples on the. And we actually, a lot of people ask me about does the apples brown. When apples brown, that's not going to hurt you. So it's your choice how you want it looking when you go to serve it. Some people care, and some people don't. If you do care about them looking whiter than like store-bought, then by all means, spritz them with a little bit of lemon, diluted lemon water. That's what apples look like going on the tray before they've been dehydrated. And you can see, in this case, I left the skins on. That's a personal matter, whether you want to peel them first or leave the skins on. But I slice apples into 1/4 of an inch. This or any low acid item should be sprayed with lemon juice before dehydrating in order to add extra vitamin C. This process also helps retain the natural beauty colors of your fruit and vegetables. This is what they look like after they're dehydrated. Have you passed around a bottle of apples? Okay. So you want to pre-treat, dehydrate at 135, 4 to 18 hours. And as you can see, 4 to 18 hours is a pretty big difference, but it has everything to do with how much humidity is in your air. Eat them as is or add them to pies. They make great apple pies and cobblers, breads or cookies. I make apple bread, muffins, pancakes, pies, and many more delicious recipes using the dehydrated apples. All winter, I never have to peel an apple or cut anything. I can easily make meals fast and easy with these. Bananas are another thing that makes into a great, and a lot of times you get the brown spots on them and you're wondering what to do. Just, don't throw them away. Apparently, we're finding out that they're much more nutritious when they're at that stage. It's a great way to use bananas that might otherwise go bad, but they still taste good. And this is what they look like on the tray going in. This is, I just took you can do them in all forms. In this case, I'm making it into jerky, which I don't have a sample of that to float around. There is one thing of jerky in there, but it's something besides bananas. So this is put through the blender. It's a liquid and it's a cup. This right here is the whole one. I know a lot of you probably never heard of dehydrating an entire banana, but you can do it. And these are the coins, which you often see in the store. They come that way. You peel and slice thinly. How thin is up to you, but put a 1/4 to 3/8 inch is what I do. Make a fine chip and spray with lemon juice. You can also cut the banana lengthwise for banana sticks. 135 degrees for 6 to 12 hours. Always cut your bananas with stainless steel blade for a nicer looking and clean product. The next slide I want to show you, I was invited over to some friend's house, and she offered me a snack, and it was a whole banana. And I looked at it and went, thank you, but... So, it was sitting in my seat, and I was on my way to town the next day, and I was really hungry. And I looked at it, and I thought, well, let me give it a try. So I opened it up, and I ate it, and it turned out fantastic. So it's another one of those, don't judge the book by its cover, but I want to show you what this item looked like. And you probably go ahead and pass that around. That's a dehydrated whole banana. You can see why I wasn't really crazy about the idea of grabbing it. But it turns out it's very tasty. So if you can get a kid to taste it, it's going to be good. But you can also take that whole dry banana and put it, oh, by the way, that's a great thing to dunk into vanilla yogurt. I'm sorry. And here it is powdered. All those bananas went on the dehydrator. They got dehydrated, and I went ahead and put them into powder, which makes it easy to rehydrate in recipes for your pumpkins and muffins and pancakes, everything. Raw figs right off the tree are a treat. These were 3D, and they were glistening with the morning dew when we got them. And they're beautiful when they're cut up and put on the tray. Look at these coins of figs. Aren't they beautiful? And they're just as tasty dry as they are fresh. And these can be stored as is or made into a powder and used for a substitute sugar. They're yummy to snack on and one of our favorites. Also, you've got cantaloupe. That goes great. You want to cut your cantaloupe on, and that's going onto the tray. And this is what it looks like once it's dehydrated, coming off of the tray. I believe there is some cantaloupe in there to do. But anyway, coming off the tray, it looks like that. And this is the whole cantaloupe. And again, it doesn't look very tasty, but it tastes good. Kiwi does wonderful. It's another really fine fruit to dehydrate. A lot of times you can get kiwi very inexpensively at big box stores, and I dehydrate them. There they are on the tray, and they're much easier and cheaper to dehydrate, and they rehydrate wonderful. Pineapple's another thing, and the kiwi and the pineapple, all that's really good in homemade yogurt. Especially, if I put, a lot of times I'll put this dried fruit in my yogurt and let it sit in the refrigerator overnight, and it's my breakfast in the morning, and it's rehydrated really nice. Rehydrated. Okay, there's the pineapple, dehydrated. Fresh strawberries do great. They're just sliced and put on the tray. That is what these are, that is in the wooden box, I think. They're in little bitty containers. I got these at the office supply place. I think they usually use them for paper clips and things like that. But this is strawberries, and this is blueberries. And on the trail, we use these with instant breakfast. And our milk you didn't just add water to it. I added our milk to it because we were burning 5,000 calories a day doing what we were doing. So, in the case of a grid down situation, you're trying to pack as many calories and nutrients and protein as you can into each dish. So we put fruit with just a vanilla instant breakfast and whole powdered milk. We would shake that up and have it in our container ready to drink in the morning first thing. It was breakfast ed, basically, but it makes a great breakfast on the run. The great things come in small packages. These tiny fruit-sized fruit envelopes added a tremendous punch of flavor and fiber to our instant breakfasts. Watermelon is one of my most favorite fruits to do. It's important that to cut the watermelon about 1/3 of an inch thick. Any thicker than that, it won't dehydrate well. Dehydrate between 24 and 48 hours. That's a long time. And the reason for that is because of the high sugar content in watermelon. The higher the sugar content in your product, and this is true of tomatoes too, the longer you're going to have to dehydrate it. Somewhere between 150 and 135, depending on how taffy-like that you want it, or until it's no longer mushy. The consistency will be that of taffy. And it also, this is what it looks like when it's all, it's an excellent candy to melt in your mouth or on your tongue, and try dipping that in dark chocolate. Sometimes when you first chew the taffy leather, it might taste with a slight hint of fermentation. Expect that. Remember, I said that because when you first taste it, you're not going to be expecting that. But that said, the taste will go away after a few seconds, and you will be able to taste that anymore. And it's expected anytime you do dehydrate a high sugary food. So we're moving into dairy products, things like sour cream and cottage cheese. They dehydrate perfectly. And again, you're leaving on a trip like this weekend, you've got those products in your refrigerator, and you know they're going to be bad before you get back. Throw them on your dehydrator and let them go. They rehydrate great. I have personally been very successful in dehydrating sour cream and cottage cheese, and those samples are going around. Also, I dehydrate my own eggs. We've got our own hens, and we end up with a whole lot more eggs than what we need. And rather than sell them or give them away, I dehydrate them. And as you can see here, this is what they look like. I just, do a dozen of them in a bowl, and I mix them up with a whatever. I use a hand mixer to get them thoroughly mixed. And a cup each goes into these little clear jelly roll trays. That's what they look like when they come off of the tray. And you can, in the dehydrated egg, you can see how it's glistening. That's fat and protein in there, which makes that a little more susceptible to long-term storage, but it's still really great. I'm going to pass around to you both my home cooked, my home done dehydrated eggs, as well as the commercial dehydrated whole egg. So you can buy them at Jan's, or if you've got hens, you might as well go ahead and do them yourself, because they use up the same exact way. And you can see it going through the blender here to become a powder. And 1 tablespoon of a dried egg equals, plus 1 tablespoon of water equals that whole egg in your recipes. Sour cream is wonderful. I pour it just right out of the container and on fruit leather trays. This is what it looks like when it's dehydrated. It becomes like a bark. Is there no I think there's. Okay. And this is what it looks like dried. That's a whole container of sour cream. Cottage cheese does wonderful, and that's another one that often sits in my refrigerator and doesn't get used, so I throw it on the food dehydrator, and I use that. This is a 16-ounce container of cottage cheese, 4 ounces per tray, and I'll use that to thicken things. And extra nutrition, I'll put that in soups and stews and baking mixes, everything. Okay, so dehydrated cottage is on the, that's after it's been dehydrated, and that's after it's been thrown through the food processor to make it into a powder. Breadcrumbs, do your own breadcrumbs. You don't need to buy those. You've got, heels and things like that. I just throw them in a bag in the freezer, run them through the food processor, get them into crumbs, throw them on the dehydrator, and that's what they look like. They look just like they're coming off the store shelf, and they are. It's amazing how the food industry can take something as simple and plain as breadcrumbs and make them full of so much junk. This has more than, the ones off of the shelf have more than 30 ingredients in them, including high fructose corn syrup and partially hydrogenated vegetable oil. Not to mention, it's made with highly refined white flour. So, by all means, I encourage you to make your own breadcrumbs. Soups and stews are probably one of the greatest ways to use your food storage. Chili, tomato soup, spaghetti sauce. These dishes can be made and dehydrated. In other words, you can make your chili up or your spaghetti sauce or whatever it is, throw it on these things right here, dehydrate them, and they're good to go for rehydration for your instant when you just can't stop to cook. That's a great, we use those on the trail and they turned out great. Or you can add the components in separately. It depends on how you want to do that, and they can be put back together for the same effect. Rehydration is best done in the crock pot. If you're making a prepackaged soups for easy cooking or give away, you can add all the spices to the mix. The only thing you have to keep separate are the bouillon cubes in your meal in a jar type of things. Because, the bouillon cubes have a liquid to it. If you're using powdered bouillon, then you can add it right in there. And you don't want to add cornstarch or flour, which is the same thing in canning. You don't add those either. I don't understand why that is, but you can't add that. You place these items, but be sure you place if you are going to use cornstarch or flour, you place those things in a little sealed bag on the bottom of your jar. But when you make your meals in a jar, put your littlest things in the bottom so they don't sift down through. It'll make a lot prettier presentation in the end. Something that I like to show is our tomato toss. This is ready in 2 minutes. It's an example of pre-made convenience dinner. Dried julienne tomatoes, onions, mushrooms, garlic, spinach, jalapeno, celery, bell peppers, and spices. All I do is pour 1/2 cup of boiling water and let them sit for 2 minutes, and I add to cooked pasta, rice, or tomato sauces. You can top baked potatoes, pizza, bread. You can use that with chicken. It makes a great meal. When's it done? A lot of people want to know, when is it done? Your best bet is long time and low temperature. Never try to speed things up by increasing the temperature in order to finish at a certain time. Regardless if I'm doing a fruit or vegetable, I never go over 135. The only exception to that is the meat. When you're doing meat, you take that up to 165 for safety reasons. So this is the pumpkin seal. David, you want to get that out to start? Food storage. Your containers, you can use Seal a Meal, which a lot of you are familiar with. Mason jars. We're going to demonstrate how to do a mason jar sealing. Food saver bags. Of course, location. You need to use cool, dry, dark. Freezing can extend the life of all these dried products if you want to extend the life of them. Although, I believe that you can safely use them 10 years from the time you dehydrate them. Storage life, it'll sometimes be up to 10 years. Okay, we're going to demonstrate the pump and seal oxygen packs, which I showed you earlier, and Jan has her small little absorbing packages that can be placed into your vacuum sealed bags for even further. The purpose of the oxygen pack is to absorb the residual oxygen. Okay, so let's go ahead and do this because it's really this gal right over here that's teaching the bread class, Glenda Jones. She was my neighbor, and I called her one night and I said, what is this pump and seal thing? I'd never heard of it before, and I ran up and she showed me how to use it. Do you have a can opener here?
Yes.
Okay, and I came down and ordered mine that night, and I loved it ever since. I've had it for, I guess, 4 or 5 years, and it's working marvelously. But this is how a pump and seal works. The fuller your jar is, the better, and it basically pulls the air out. And all you do is, they send you this. By the way, this is the only thing this company makes, and you can only get them on the internet up until recently, and that the Whittier store now carries pump and seal. So if you want to go buy your own and not have to go through the internet, you can buy them from that store. That's the only place I know of locally to buy them. So she asked me to actually say so. Okay, so in your package you end up with a pump and seal. It's even a really old logo, but it's working great. And you also get a little tack. Mine's been lost long ago, so I just picked up a tack and it works fine. In addition to that, you get these rolls of what look like little bitty Band-Aids. And my best guess is that's electrical tape and tape. So you the first thing you do is take your mason jar lid, which you don't need you can use used mason jar lids. Don't throw them away. So you've got the whole mason jar lid, and the first thing you do is take your tack. You're going to do one, David. You take your tack and push it down through the mason jar lid, pooch, right in the middle, and you end up with a hole. Okay? And you put the thing back down, finish with the tack. Now, put your ring back around it. I think you're blocking it. Okay, go ahead and show the camera how to do that, because that's amazing in my opinion. So you pump it 4, 5, 6 times. He'll eventually feel some resistance in it, which will tell him it's probably all the air is out of it. The only time I've ever had trouble with that not working is if I don't have enough food in there. Like I said, the fuller it is, the better. Now he can, wait a minute, he can pick that up. See, that's, oops, anyway. So it's off now, and it's actually a self-sealing thing. You can see there's a little dimple that has gone down inside that hole. And you can reuse these little Band-Aids over and over and over again. Now, so that's completely helped. Okay, now then, this is the neat part. This is what sold me, and I went down and bought one right away. Is that great or what? I love it. So I don't miss I love my pump and seal. The store that you can get those at is in Whittier. It's a little pepper store right on the highway you're going through. It's on the left as you're going that way. I've taught there and I don't even remember what the name of it is. I'm sorry. Food storage tips don't open until it's ready to use. I keep some of my things in great big jars like this, and then I bring that down and get them into little jars, which I can use. Packaged in quantities that you'll use in a reasonable amount of time. Use oxygen packs, which you can get those from Jan. Your enemies are water, moisture, oxygen, light, heat, rodents, and bugs. And Jan can help you on what size of the oxygen absorber to use. Okay, preparing dehydrated food for storage. Items like sour cream, yogurt, spices, herbs, sauces, and soups can be powdered by using a blender and a food processor. Vegetables can be broken up to reduce volume and kept in large pieces depending on the intended use. You can either eat it as is, vegetable chips, fruit leathers, and roll-ups. You can use hot water over them to rehydrate food faster. Soak vegetables and meat for several hours before using. Use the rehydrated water to cook with. Don't throw it away. It's full of vitamins. Powdered items require little time to rehydrate. dehydrated fruit and yogurt works very well. On average, vegetables will rehydrate. This is key. They will rehydrate to twice their dehydrated size. So if you're using a recipe and it's called for a cup of green beans, use a half a cup of dehydrated green beans. Okay, so the effects on the nutritional value, especially when the process takes place in your own home, there's only minimal effects on your food compared with canning and freezing, both of which involve extreme heat and the food drying is least damaging form of. So you can also package up pretty little jars of healthy snacks, and they make great gifts. As you can see here, we've got bananas, strawberries, oranges, kiwi, and I think that's pineapple. Also, foods in a jar. Again, these are great gifts to use your dehydrated foods with. And as you can see, they've put the powder. Here's an example of beef stroganoff, and the powder is down here. The milk and so forth is way down here. And the noodles are on the top. And you can put your ground beef in there. The zucchini sausage skillet, macaroni and cheese, all these things are things that you've got your food stored for and that you could put into nice, tasty meals for your family. I personally don't have things like that on my shelf because I think I'm going to be using the components of all these things myself day by day. It's a great thing to give away as a gift, but I don't necessarily need it on my shelf to feed my family like that. One of the things I want to pass on to you that is one of the greatest things is chicken and dumplings. This is found in the, I believe it's in the Spanish sections where I find it in the grocery store. We found these using them on the trail. They were absolutely great. That's what they look like when they're coming out of the package. And you just couldn't ask for a better dumpling. I mean, you would think those were fresh flour and water and rolled out and everything. And they taste so homemade. So you take these dumplings, put them in a jar, put some freeze-dried chicken with them and some bouillon, and you've got chicken and dumplings. That's your meal in a jar right there. Okay, get the Nido, if you would, please. We do not use regular dry powdered milk. We use a product called Nido. Instant dry whole milk, highly recommended and inexpensive. It's locally available. I get mine at Walmart, and it's usually in the Spanish section. That, I believe, was a product that Hershey's created for a third world country situation. But I think it's the only form in which you can find whole milk dry. And again, we needed the calories, and the taste is great too. So we use this when we're baking bread, everything. We love Nido. And I think another thing that I really highly recommend is using, this is the whole powdered eggs. They're pretty self-explanatory on their use. The shortening power is the one, you can get that out. I've taken it out of the can and put it it's in the big, okay, pass it a little one, yeah. The shortening powder is so great to make shelf-ready pancake mixes, cake mixes, muffin mixes. I mean, you can use that in place of using canned butter or refrigerated butter. I think in a grid down situation, this shortening would really be handy in extending what you can cook with. I love this, and this is a product that you can get from Jan. She carries shortening powder. Okay, so this right here is, this is something I'm going to give you a tip from that we learned on the trail. And this is basically, you're just dehydrating, it's dehydrated rice. And I spread cooked rice out on a dehydrator tray with non-stick sheets, parchment paper, whatever. Dry the rice at 125 for approximately 5 hours. And dehydrating rice varies with the dehydrator models and humidity. Once or twice through the drying process, break up any rice that's stuck together. It's not a problem if some rice remains stuck together and while some separated. Rice will be hard when properly dried. 1 cup equals 3 1/2 cups cooked. So approximately 1/3 to 2 cups dried. And the purpose behind this is if you're in a grid down situation and you don't have fuel to get you through 30 minutes of cooking, this is already cooked. All you're doing is pouring boiling water on it and it's done. And you can do the same thing with pasta. I'm a foodie and I admit it, and I didn't want to take just the same noodles all the time on the trail, so I wanted to take some of these like big wagon meals, and they would be way too long cooking on the trail, so because you're carrying your fuel out there and everything. So I developed where I car cooked it and dehydrated it, and when we got to the camp at night, we threw it in with our pasta sauce and our beef crumbles or chicken, and it was instantly ready. I mean, as soon as we had camp up, it was ready to eat dinner. So you can pre-cook your pastas. Oh, here's another meal in the jar. These, you can get these on the internet. They're little, I think they're 1 tablespoon of olive oil. This is for a meal in a jar scenario. And this is your powdered cheese, but you can get that from Jan too. And I repackage all this is milk. When you're making macaroni and cheese, they always ask you to put in a 1/4 cup of milk, I think. So we use our whole milk with that. And then this is our pre-cooked pasta. So put that together with a freeze-dried meat, and you've got your meal in a jar. Or a bag, whichever one you want to do. That will last you forever, and it tastes so good. It makes me hungry right now thinking about it. So to rehydrate, you're bringing a pot of water to boil. Drop the desired amount of pasta in the boiling water. Give it a stir. Depending on the thickness of the pasta, we usually rehydrate in just a few minutes. Spaghetti rehydrates almost instantly. By the time you give it a stir, it's already limp and ready to use. Remove from the water and serve. Okay, I think that's all, and I want to ask you if you have any questions.
How much electricity does it take to run?
The gentleman asked how much it costs to run a dehydrator. We ran a kilowatt meter on that and found out it costs us about 25 cents a day to run that little bitty fan on the dehydrator. Okay, ma'am?
When you were pumping the air out of one of the jars, you poked a hole in, right?
That's correct. We poked a hole in the lid.
I think I missed the step after that. What happens with that hole?
We put the little Band-Aid over the hole, okay? The little yellow Band-Aid that comes with the pump and seal, and then we put the pump on it. You saw that, right?
You could reuse that lid, but only
That's
for
right.
the same pumping thing, and put the little Band-Aid
Right, the
on.
little Band-Aid thing is reusable multiple times. I don't think I've ever thrown it away.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions?
How did you say to rehydrate the broccoli?
Okay, the question was how to rehydrate the broccoli, and that's the same with all vegetables. You just set it in a container and pour boiling water over it, set your timer for an hour, and you're good to go. Yes, sir.
You said light is one of the enemies of this process,
Big time.
and sell a lot of stuff in clear jars.
Right.
Is that an issue? As long as you have to make sure you store it away somewhere?
Yes, this is stored in our basement where there is no light. The question was, I have my stuff in mason jars. And, one of your alternatives, if you don't have a basement and you only have a very well lit spot, is to use these Mylar bags. So that certainly would keep the light out. Yes, ma'am. Oh, yes, you can dehydrate cheese. And you would probably run that through your shredder on the Cuisinart and get it down to little pieces and throw that on the dehydrator, and it'll dehydrate up, but it'll be one of the ones like sour cream that you have to watch. It won't have a 10-year life on it, although it will do wonderfully and with no air in the jar, or if you're storing it in the freezer. So the question was, can you dehydrate cheese? Yes. Yes, ma'am.
Through a mistake of my own in canning, I added some thicker, and I read I shouldn't have. And the reason being, the thicker things don't heat at the same rate as the other things, so you're not sure what it is.
Right, that she was referencing the use of flour or cornstarch with the things when you're making your meal in a jar, it's fine to put your powder down there on the bottom, and it rehydrates wonderfully. But I would not suggest like adding it to a sauce. I would wait until you're warming up the sauce to make it thicker with your flour and sugar. Anybody else got any questions? Yes, ma'am. Jan has got some great books over there for dehydration, I believe, and I don't personally have any. I think that what you're going to find is it's a lot of personal, you just jump in both feet. Get yourself things at the grocery store and bring them home and throw them on the food dehydrator, and then by all means use them, I don't have a specific book that I would like to recommend. More importantly, I have to say that I'm very partial to this particular dehydrator because of its sturdiness, and it's just been there for me. I mean, the Lippy dehydrator is a really, really good model dehydrator in terms of getting your money's worth out of something. Yes, ma'am. The question was, do you wash your mints wash your herbs before you dehydrate them or hang them up? I personally don't, but the reason for that is I harvest them in the morning when the dew is fresh on them and they're very clean on their own. And I don't have issues with spraying with, sprays and that type of thing. So I personally do not. I just hang them up as they are. And when we were on the trail, you got to remember we ate dirt. It wasn't that unusual that we had dirt in our food, so we got over that real quick. A little dust here and there is not going to hurt. Yes, ma'am.
So they're the big jars of powder. When you open it up and you're taking out just what you need, then you seal it again?
Yes.
So
The question is,
exposed to more oxygen.
oh, yeah. Oh, that would be the case in anything you're using, even if you're buying the big commercial things. The question is, once you open the package, or have you destroyed its capability of being able to keep it? That's one of the nice things about the pump and seal is that you can reseal it. But and also to answer that question, see this is a shortening powder, and you don't rehydrate that. You use it cup for a cup. But the little container that he passed around is that little one right there in the front. So I will take a usable size, like 2 cups, and put it in my pantry and operate out of that. And that's fine that way. Okay, I think that this dehydrator runs about $140. If you want to see one of those dehydrators in person, my kitchen shop downtown Franklin, North Carolina, has started carrying them because they've gotten so many requests for them from my classes. So if you want to, she charges the same thing that you can get them on the internet for. So by all means, go into the kitchen shop downtown Franklin and get yourself one of these Liquip Pro, or you can order them on the internet. It'll come right to your door. Yes, ma'am.
Do you have just makeup jars, or are you reusing jars that were previously used for something else?
Oh, definitely reuse all kind of jars. Any jar that's got a gasket on it, like a baby food jar, works wonderfully because that gasket helps seal it too. The question was, can you use any jar? Do you have to use mason jars? And my answer is, you can reuse any jar that has a gasket on it. As long as the lid has a gasket, a rubber gasket. The ones that you get, salad dressing with, they have a rubber gasket. I never throw those away, and they're wonderful for using with mason jars. But I just use a used canning jar lid. Waste not, want not.